Measuring Retention and Transfer by Heron Barriga. Introduction, retention, and transfer tests are used for estimations and learning. They measure a relatively permanent change in performance. The retention and transfer tests can be given very shortly after the practice, minutes or days. Delayed retention tests are the best way to measure the amount of information learned, and transfer tests are tailored to more specific tasks. In closed tasks, skills performed more consistently with little or no variation. A retention test is a way to measure these skills, and there are variations in the environment that can provide for transfer. Open skills, on the other hand, have to be performed in different contexts. These skills need near transfer, which in this process goes from one task or situation to another very similar task or situation. The highly skilled are able to perform in varied and unpredictable environments. To test the learners on similar tasks, it is a good example of generalized near transfer. Far transfer is the best test to see a transfer of general abilities. Purpose, hypotheses. The purpose of this was to learn the experience of progressing through an entire experimental learning lab, including retention and transfer tests. Method. The lab requires the participant to underhand throw a beanbag in the direction of a target with their non-dominant hand and their toes pointed at a 90-degree angle away from the target. Mark a line on the floor indicating where the participant will throw the beanbag, a line from which the participant will throw the beanbag, and then take 5 large steps forward and mark a small X. Then the experimenter will measure and record the distance between the start line and the target. Once a participant throws a beanbag twice, the experimenter will record the distance from the center of the beanbag and the center of the X. Once recorded, the beanbags will be returned to the participant. The participant will perform 40 trials. While the participant does this, the experimenter will give a 1-minute break after 10 trials and 5-minute break after the 40th trial. Once the 5-minute break is over, the experimenter will administer a 10-trial retention test. Then the experimenter will provide another 1-minute break and then administer a 10-trial transfer test. The transfer test will require the participant to throw the beanbag from 1 meter behind the start line. Then the experimenter will calculate the average CE and VE scores across the 4 practice blocks, retention test and transfer test. Results. For our lab, we wanted to do a lab that provides the experience of progressing through an entire experimental learning protocol, including retention and transfer tests. The experiment was performed by tossing a beanbag from a designated distance and throwing it to the target. Then measured the distance from the center of the X to the center of the beanbag. Over 40 trials were made. Then a transfer test to see how accurate they would be. The table showed that CE transfer showed a higher level of retention. Discussion. Our participants' performance differed between the retention and transfer test by throwing the beanbag farther from the X during the transfer. It looked as if our participant was still aiming for the first X due to the muscle memory from the first test. The transfer test would be classified as a task change because our participant was asked to hit a different target after several tests with the repetitive target. References: R. Schmidt and T. Lee, 2020 Motor Learning and Performance Instructor Guide, 6th edition. Champaign, Illinois, Human Kinetics. Thank you.